Ava Marlowe's simple life is ripped apart when she's sold to the city's most feared billionaire, Dante Cross. Trapped in a world of power, lies, and burning attraction, Ava fights to keep her soul intact. But what happens when the cold, ruthless man meant to break her falls for the innocence he never believed existed? Their battle of wills ignites a love neither of them expected, and neither can survive without. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, heart-stopping stories you won't want to miss. If anyone had asked me a week ago what my life looked like, I would have said it was small, simple, but mine. The scent of roses, the delicate crinkle of wrapping paper, the low hum of the old radio behind the counter, those were my constants. I was Ava Marlowe, the girl who found solace in petals and sunlight filtering through dusty shop windows. I inherited the flower shop from my grandmother, who built it with love and laughter and always told me that even the smallest seed could grow into something extraordinary if it had the courage to bloom. I believed her. Until the night my father stumbled through the door. I almost didn't recognize him at first. His face, once kind and worn with laugh lines, was now gaunt, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes reeking of stale whiskey and desperation. He didn't greet me, didn't ask how I'd been. He just collapsed onto the counter, clutching a crumpled envelope like it was the only thing holding him upright. "You're gonna save me, Ava," he slurred, voice cracking like dry wood. "It's just a marriage, a favor. Then everything goes away." I laughed, sharp, disbelieving, thinking it was another one of his drunken ramblings. But when he shoved the envelope into my hands, my heart dropped. Inside was a contract, stamped and official, my name glaring back at me in black ink. I wasn't being asked. I was being given away. Sold. The amount listed at the bottom made my stomach turn. Enough to wipe clean a mountain of debts. Enough to explain why my father would trade away his only daughter like a pawn in some twisted game. "No," I whispered, my fingers trembling. "You can't." But he didn't even flinch. "You have to," he said, "or they'll kill me." The door chimed behind us. Two men in dark suits stepped inside, their cold stares pinning me in place. They didn't speak, but their presence said enough. I had no choice. By midnight, I was sitting in the backseat of a black car, the city blurring past the windows like a bad dream. The driver didn't speak to me. I clutched the envelope to my chest, the edges cutting into my palms, and tried to hold myself together. The car stopped in front of a building that could only be described as a palace disguised as a skyscraper. Black glass gleamed under the streetlights, and security guards in tailored suits lined the marble steps. This wasn't just wealth. It was power. Waiting inside was Dante Cross. I had heard the name whispered in dark corners, a ruthless billionaire who built his empire through methods no one dared question. Rumors said he made enemies disappear, that loyalty was a currency he collected with blood and fear. He was young, just a few years older than me, but his reputation was ancient, carved in fear and respect. I hadn't even seen his face yet, and already my skin crawled. The elevator doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a private penthouse that didn't feel like it belonged to this world. Marble floors stretched endlessly. Chandeliers glittered overhead like frozen stars. And there, standing by a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city, was Dante Cross. He turned slowly, and my heart stopped. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair falling in careless waves over a forehead too handsome to be safe. His eyes, silver gray and merciless, sliced through me as if they could read every terrified thought in my head. "So," he said, voice smooth like silk laced with razor blades, "this is what my money bought." The way he said it made me feel smaller than I already did, a commodity rather than a person. I stood frozen, my pulse pounding so hard I thought it might tear free from my chest. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, cold and assessing. "Pretty enough," he mused, stepping closer. "We'll make it work." I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't obey. I was trapped. And deep down I knew. My life, the simple, fragile one I had fought to build, was gone. Forever. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a sharp knock at the door. Before I could even sit up, a maid in a crisp black uniform entered, laying a dress across the end of the bed. It was soft cream silk, sleeveless, the fabric so light it almost floated. But when I touched it, I felt the weight of it. The expectation, the chains disguised as beauty. Mr. Cross expects you ready in 1 hour, the maid said stiffly before disappearing as quickly as she'd come. I stared at the dress like it might bite me. 45 minutes later, dressed and trembling, I made my way through the cavernous halls of Dante's penthouse. Every step echoed, each one pulling me closer to whatever nightmare waited. My heels clicked on the polished marble, a countdown I couldn't stop. I found him in the dining room, sitting at the head of a long, gleaming table. A half-finished glass of whiskey dangled lazily from his fingers. He didn't rise when he saw me. He simply watched, his silver eyes narrowing with an unreadable expression. "Sit," Dante said, voice low but commanding. I moved stiffly to the chair beside him, acutely aware of how exposed I felt. The dress clung to my skin, whispering along my body with every nervous shift. I kept my hands tightly folded in my lap, refusing to meet his gaze. The silence stretched painfully. "You're prettier than the pictures your father showed me," he said finally, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Not smarter, though. Otherwise, you wouldn't have signed away your life so easily." I flinched. His words struck harder than any slap. "I didn't sign anything," I said, my voice too small, too shaky. He laughed, a low, humorless sound that vibrated through the cavernous room. "Details," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "Intent doesn't matter. Ownership does." I wanted to scream at him, tell him he was wrong, that I wasn't something to be owned. But the look in his eyes, dark, heavy, cold, froze the words in my throat. He stood slowly, moving with the kind of lethal grace I'd only ever seen in big cats on documentaries. His chair scraped back, and he stalked toward me, every step measured, predatory. I gripped the edge of the table, heart hammering. When he stopped beside me, he leaned down, his face inches from mine. The scent of his cologne hit me, something smoky, woody, expensive, and I hated the way it made my head spin. "You're trembling," he murmured, almost pleased. "Good. Fear will make this easier." His hand brushed my chin, tilting my face up, so I had no choice but to look into his eyes. They weren't just gray, they were the color of a storm about to break. "You'll behave," he said softly, dangerously. "Smile when I say, stand when I command, speak only when I permit." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "And if I don't?" I whispered, my voice cracking. He smiled, a slow, cruel smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Then I'll break you." I recoiled, yanking my face from his grasp. A flash of something crossed his features. Surprise, perhaps, that I dared resist, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "Go back to your room," he said, stepping back, slipping his hands casually into his pockets like nothing had happened. "You'll be presented as my fiancée at the charity gala tomorrow night. Don't embarrass me." I rose on shaky legs, ready to flee, when his voice stopped me at the doorway. "And Ava," he called, voice low and dangerous. "If you even think about running, remember, I own more than just you. I own your father's life too." The threat settled over me like a second skin, suffocating and absolute. I nodded stiffly, not trusting myself to speak, and stumbled back toward the maze of halls, my heart hammering in my chest. Behind me, I could feel his eyes, watching, waiting, calculating. I was nothing but a pawn in his game, a pretty piece on his chessboard. And Dante Cross? He was the player who never lost. At least, not yet. The days that followed blurred into a strange, stifling routine. I moved like a shadow through the penthouse, avoiding Dante whenever I could, but it never mattered. I could feel him even when he wasn't in the room, a presence like a storm cloud pressing down on my skin, waiting to explode. The gala loomed like a guillotine. I spent the afternoon being fitted into a dress that cost more than my entire shop. It was red, deep and bold, clinging to my body like a second skin. I hated it almost as much as I hated what it symbolized. When Dante appeared to escort me downstairs, he said nothing for a long moment, just stared. Something flickered in his eyes, something hot and dangerous, but he shuttered it away before I could name it. "You clean up better than I expected," he said, offering his arm. I didn't take it, not willingly, but a low warning look made me curl my fingers lightly around his elbow, my skin burning where we touched. The gala was a glittering nightmare, flashing cameras, murmured gossip, champagne flutes clinking like distant bells. Dante commanded the room effortlessly, his hand firm at the small of my back, guiding me like a possession on display. I kept my head high, my smile brittle. "Smile wider," he whispered against my ear when the press circled, and the mocking edge to his voice made my stomach churn. I did, teeth grinding behind closed lips. When he wasn't looking, I caught glimpses of people staring, judging. I didn't belong here, and they knew it. I was the poor girl bought by the billionaire, the dirty secret wrapped in silk. At some point, a woman with sleek black hair and a smile sharp enough to cut glass slithered up to us. She touched Dante's arm too familiarly, her manicured nails trailing up his sleeve. "So this is your latest charity case," she purred, eyeing me like I was something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Ava is my fiancée." The woman laughed, a soft, cruel sound. "Fiancée, darling, you must be very talented." Humiliation burned my skin. I wanted to run, to scream, but I held my ground. I stared straight into her eyes and said, "He chose me, not you. That must sting." The woman's smile faltered, just for a heartbeat, before she turned away, her heels clicking in angry rhythm across the marble. I felt Dante's gaze burn into me, but I refused to meet it. I didn't want to see the mockery, or worse, the approval I thought I'd find there. Later, back at the penthouse, I peeled the dress from my skin like it was a weight I couldn't bear anymore. I scrubbed my face clean of makeup, but nothing could wash away the feeling of being dirty, used. I was in the bathroom when the door slammed open. Dante strode in without knocking, his tie loose around his neck, anger rolling off him in waves. "What was that tonight?" he barked. I gripped the edge of the sink to steady myself. "What was what?" "You embarrassed me," he snarled. "You embarrassed her." I turned, heart hammering, and faced him. "She insulted me." I defended myself. "You're supposed to smile and endure, Ava. That's the role you agreed to play." "I agreed to nothing," I shouted, the words ripping free before I could stop them. "You bought me. I never had a choice." Something shifted in his eyes then, a crack splintering through the ice. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You think I wanted this?" I continued, voice trembling. "You think I'm some gold digger your money could buy? I didn't ask for any of this." He stepped forward, and for once I didn't flinch. I lifted my chin, daring him to do his worst. Then, in a voice rough and almost broken, he asked, "Are you saying you've never?" I swallowed hard, the truth clawing its way out of me. "I've never been with anyone," I whispered. "You're my prison, not my ambition." For a moment, Dante just stood there, stunned, the air between us crackling. Then he turned abruptly, running a hand through his hair in a rare, almost human gesture of frustration. Without another word, he walked out, the door slamming behind him so hard the walls shook. I slid to the floor, my whole body trembling, but not from fear this time. From something far more dangerous. The days passed in a thick, suffocating silence. Dante barely looked at me, barely spoke. But I felt him everywhere, his presence, his gaze when he thought I wasn't looking, the tension winding tighter with every moment we shared the same air. Something had cracked between us, something fragile and dangerous, and it was growing. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I wanted nothing from him, nothing but distance. But when I found myself wandering into the vast, cold library late one evening, I knew the lie for what it was. I stood by the towering windows watching the city glitter below when the sound of footsteps made my heart lurch. I didn't turn. I knew it was him. I could feel the weight of his stare like a physical touch. "You're a terrible liar, Ava," he said softly behind me. I braced myself, gripping the windowsill until my knuckles whitened. "I'm not lying," I said, but the words rang hollow. He moved closer, the air shifting, growing thicker with his nearness. "You act like you're untouched by this," he murmured, voice rough. "By me, but you're not." I turned then, anger flaring through my fear. "You think you know me? You don't even try." For a moment we just stared at each other, breathing hard, the distance between us, crackling like a live wire. And then he moved. 1 second, there was space. The next, his hands were on my face, his mouth crashing into mine with a force that stole my breath. His kiss was wild, desperate, punishing, and I hated that I melted into it, that my fingers clutched at his shirt like I needed him to keep standing. He broke the kiss first, panting, his forehead pressed to mine. "Tell me to stop," he rasped, voice barely more than a growl. "Tell me to let you go." I should have. Every sane part of me screamed at me to say it, but my heart, traitorous and wild, said something else. I pulled him back to me. His groan rumbled through his chest as he lifted me effortlessly, carrying me across the room. I didn't realize we were in his bedroom until my back hit the soft, cool sheets, and he hovered over me, his body trembling with restraint. "You drive me insane," he muttered against my throat, his hands sliding under my sweater, finding bare skin. "I can't think when you're near." Neither could I. I arched into him instinctively, my body answering a call older than reason. His hands were sure but gentle, undoing me with every touch, every kiss. When he peeled the sweater over my head, he paused, his silver eyes darkening as they roamed over me. "Beautiful," he said, voice rough. I reached for him, pulling at his shirt until he ripped it off, revealing a body sculpted from power and control, muscles shifting under his skin as he braced himself above me. When he kissed me again, it was slower, deeper, full of something that scared me even more than his anger had. Something dangerously close to tenderness. He undressed me with a reverence that undid me completely, leaving me bare and shivering beneath him. His touch mapped every inch of me, learned me, worshipped me. And when he finally joined our bodies, the pain was sharp, a gasp torn from my lips, but he stilled, forehead pressed to mine, breathing ragged. "I've got you," he whispered. "I'll take care of you." Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away, wrapping my arms around him, trusting him in a way that terrified me. He moved slowly at first, letting me adjust, his mouth finding mine again and again. Each thrust, each kiss, shattered another wall between us, until there was nothing left but raw, aching need. The pleasure built in waves, hot and relentless, until it crested and broke over us both, leaving me trembling and gasping his name. He collapsed beside me, pulling me against him, our bodies still tangled. For a long time, neither of us spoke, our breathing the only sound in the vast, silent room. Finally, he whispered so quietly I almost didn't hear it, "You're not what I expected." I smiled against his chest, exhaustion and something sweeter flooding through me. "Neither are you," I whispered back. And somewhere deep inside, I knew nothing between us would ever be the same. The peace between us didn't last. It never could in a world built on shadows and lies. I should have seen it coming, the way storms always gather even on the clearest days. It started 2 nights later after dinner when I wandered onto the balcony for fresh air. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but Dante's voice carried in the stillness, sharp and angry. "You're being played, Cross," a man said, his tone mocking. "She's not as innocent as she looks. Her father set the whole thing up, bribed to get her into your life, into your bed. Think about it. It's too perfect." The words hit like a slap, stealing my breath. I backed away, heart pounding, but not fast enough. Dante stepped out from the shadows, his eyes cold as iron. "Is it true?" he demanded, his voice low and deadly. I shook my head frantically, tears already blurring my vision. "No, Dante, no, I didn't know." But he wasn't listening. His hands gripped my arms so tightly it hurt, his fury radiating off him in waves. "You think I'm a fool?" he hissed. "That you could worm your way in here, make me want you, need you?" "I didn't plan any of this," I cried. "Please, you have to believe me." He flung me away like I burned him, his chest heaving. "Get out of my sight." The words sliced deeper than any blade could have. I stumbled backward, choking on sobs, and ran. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away. From his anger, from the betrayal written on his face. I ended up in the guest room down the hall, locking the door behind me. I curled up on the bed, pressing a pillow over my mouth to muffle the broken sounds tearing out of me. Hours passed, maybe days. I lost track of time. The house was eerily silent, as if mourning along with me. Part of me expected him to barge in, to demand explanations or hurl more accusations. But he didn't come, until he did. The door creaked open sometime in the early morning. I sat up, blinking through swollen eyes, and there he was, Dante, looking like a man who had been through hell. His hair was a mess, his clothes wrinkled, his face pale under the moonlight. "I almost let you go," he said hoarsely. "Almost convinced myself you weren't worth the risk." I stared at him, unable to speak, too afraid to hope. "But I can't," he whispered, voice breaking. "I can't lose you, Ava." Tears blurred my vision again, but this time they weren't from pain. "I'm yours," I said, the words spilling from my lips without thought, without fear. I always was. Something inside him shattered. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees in front of me, gathering me into his arms with a desperation that stole my breath. His mouth crashed into mine, hungry and aching, as if trying to erase all the distance we had created. His hands slid under my sweater, tugging it over my head, stripping me down with a frantic urgency. I let him, needing the connection as much as he did. He laid me down gently on the bed, worshipping every inch of my skin with his hands, his lips, his whispered promises. When he finally entered me, it was different this time. Slower, deeper, as if he was trying to carve his name into my very soul. We moved together in a rhythm as old as time, our bodies finding a language beyond words. Every touch, every kiss, every moan was a vow. That he was mine, that I was his. When the pleasure broke over us, it wasn't just physical. It was pure, raw, devastating love. Afterward, he didn't let me go. He held me tightly, our hearts beating in sync, his forehead pressed to mine. "I love you," he whispered fiercely, as if daring the universe to take it back. "I love you too," I breathed against his lips. And this time, there were no contracts, no chains, no doubts, only two broken souls who had found their home in each other. Sometimes, life forces us into situations we never asked for, testing the very core of who we are. Ava's story reminds us that even when the world treats us like commodities, when we are betrayed, misunderstood, or forced into battles we never chose, our worth remains untouched. True strength isn't just about surviving the storm, it's about refusing to let the storm define who we are. Through heartbreak, betrayal, and fear, Ava never lost the spark of her true self. And Dante, a man hardened by power and mistrust, learned that real love isn't something you buy, control, or manipulate. It's something you earn, something you fight to deserve. In a world built on deals and deceit, they found something pure, a connection that couldn't be bought, only given freely. This story teaches us that real love transforms. It breaks down walls, challenges pride, and rebuilds us into something stronger, something better. Sometimes the person you least expect becomes the one who saves you. Not by changing who you are, but by seeing you for everything you are and loving you anyway. If this story touched you, tell us. Where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. We'd love to know. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next unforgettable story. Your support means everything.